Hello everybody and welcome to today's Crowdfund Sport webinar. I'm Zoe, I'm part of the team here at Crowdfunder. Hopefully by the end of today's workshop you'll leave knowing more about crowdfunding and Sport England's Return to Play Active Together Fund to prepare you to crowdfund for your sports organisation. At the end you'll be sent a link to the Learn platform which will show you how to crowdfund, giving you all the tools that you need to run a successful sports campaign. There's just a few quick housekeeping points to go through before we get started. We have allowed 30 minutes for this session, but it might take a little more than that. It just depends on the amount of questions we get coming through from you guys. If you do want to ask a question, type it into the chat box, which will be on the right hand of your screen. As I mentioned, we will be having some, well, I haven't mentioned, we've actually been working from home. So anything can happen. There might be some unexpected interruptions, doorbells, dogs barking, our internet might drop out, yours might drop out. The best thing to do if it does is just refresh your screen and you should come back into the live webinar. Finally, if you are wondering if we can see you, we can't. So, we can't see you, we can't hear you. So do feel free just to pop in and out as you need to. It's only half an hour though, so hopefully we'll have you for the whole time. Today, we're going to hear from Rebecca from Sport England, who's also our crowdfunding expert, Kirsty. And we're also going to hear from someone who successfully ran a brilliant crowdfunding campaign. We'll find out what worked well for them and what didn't in making their campaign a success. So without further ado, Rebecca, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, very well, thank you. So you're here to tell us a little bit more about the Sport England funds that are available.
Yes.
So there's two funds to talk about today. Let's start with Return to Play Active Together Fund. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what types of projects Sport England would be looking for to support?
Yeah, of course. So hi everyone and thanks for joining us all today. It's great to see a whole range of you here. So for those of you who don't know, we currently have one open fund with the additional, as they've said, launching tomorrow. Active Together, our crowdfunding initiative, is part of our Return to Play funding offer. So it's to support the sport and physical activity sector throughout the ongoing coronavirus crisis with a safe return to play. We initially launched back in May 2020 now with 2.5 million and then with an additional 5 million investment earlier this year. We're looking to support organisations who have experienced short-term financial difficulty or need to adapt how they operate. So this will include if your original plans, for example, for works or fundraising opportunities have been affected over the past kind of 2 years now and kind of everything that encompasses that. To date, we've supported over 500 projects under that. So a huge amount of funds have been generated on top of what the crowd can, on top of our pledge from the crowd has kind of manipulated that as well. So yeah, I guess got potentially going on to the Places and Spaces, which is launching tomorrow. It's our new 3.5 million match funding available. And it's to help community sport and physical activity groups improve their facilities specifically and unite communities as part of the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games. So we initially focused on organisations based in the West Midlands region, again qualifying for up to £10,000 match funding with a potential future wider national rollout.
Amazing, that's brilliant. Thank you, Rebecca. So two potential funds there that our project owners can look into whether they may be eligible. We're going to speak to you a little bit later again in the webinar, Rebecca, if that's okay. If anyone's got any questions they'd like to forward towards Rebecca, if you could please pop them in the chat box and we will bring you back at the end of the webinar and go through those.
Yeah, that was fine. I was just going to add, on top of the kind of opportunity to potentially across both funds, potentially secure a pledge from Sport England, a huge part of the funding for us is to help support organisations become more sustainable and help them gain the wider skills to run a successful fundraising campaign, which is why we've got these fantastic monthly webinars and online tools. Definitely listen in and ask as many questions as you can. We're here to support you. As we all understand, crowdfunding might be a bit of a new approach for lots of organisations. So yeah, make the most of it.
Great advice, Rebecca. Thank you. Next up, we've got Kirsty, who's our crowdfunding expert. She's going to tell us a little bit more about crowdfunding for sport. Kirsty, are you there?
I am indeed. Hello, everybody. Welcome on to today, so thanks for that great introduction. I'm just going to go over a few of the basics. As Zoe mentioned up front, we've got a great online learning course which will help to consolidate what I'm going to tell you today, so definitely log on to that at the end. But let's just start off with what is crowdfunding. So it's a great way to raise money and awareness for your organisation, so by engaging with your community. You're going to create a page on our online platform, and don't worry if you're not too tech savvy, it's really simple and easy to use and very user friendly. So you're going to create a page that looks something like this one on the right hand side of the screen there, and then you're going to promote your campaign to your community, and they will then make pledges to help you reach your goal. It's really important to make sure your page is engaging, so you want to be looking outside your club members. Club members are naturally probably going to support your crowdfunder, so you really want to make it appealing to people outside your club and to a much wider audience to really make the most of your crowdfunding. When you're creating your page, personally, I'd always start with the headings so that you can sort of structure the content into clear sections. A bit like you can see on that page. So we've started with who are we, why do we need help? It just guides the reader through whatever you're trying to tell them. You're also going to then outline, obviously, as I said, just who your club are, your impact in the community is important to get across, and why you are crowdfunding. So for a lot of you that are here, it will be about the effects that the pandemic has had on your organisation. Then be totally transparent about how you plan to spend the money so that people know where their money is going to. As a potential supporter, they're probably much more likely to pledge or donate to a campaign if they can see the direct impact that their financial contribution will actually make. So that's really important. Once you have all that lovely information set out, it's time to make your page more engaging. So that means using images and videos. You can add images throughout the page, so you have a main one at the top and throughout the text. That helps to break it up, make it easier on the eye. And for a video, that helps to get the personality of your club across. So we always say about 1 to 2 minutes for a video. That's enough, that's perfect, just for getting the message across and to grab the audience's attention. It's really important to make sure that you're happy with your page before you go live, but also before you apply for your Sport England funding, because Sport England will take a look at your page to get an idea what your project is about, see if it's a good, viable project to support before they tell you when they're considering your application, they give you approval or not. So rewards, Crowdfunder is the top rewards-based platform in the UK, and that's what we're known for. So on top of a standard donation, your project can also offer rewards, and that helps to increase the amount that's pledged and hopefully the amount of pledges, the number of pledges that you can get. It just takes your campaign to the next level. So here you can see a few screenshots of some brilliant and inventive rewards that have been offered. Try to offer a range of rewards, so targeted at different audiences. So your members might be tempted by something like one-to-one coaching sessions. You could offer sponsorship if you have, maybe some hoarding around a pitch or something. You've got space to advertise. You can sell that as a sponsorship or advertising opportunity for larger donors. But then also think about the wider community, those who haven't necessarily got a sports link with your club, and it's quite good to look at relationships with local businesses. So on here you can see, for example, there's a wine tasting session and there's the fish and chips voucher. So speak to your local businesses, as well as potentially, as well as a financial contribution to your project. They may well offer a reward for you to add to your page as well. Offering these at a slight discount means that it's more appealing, and anyone in your community might well want to grab themselves a bargain. So get inventive and speak. That's one of the things, actually, we always say, speak to everybody in the club and associated with that to get creative ideas. Now, multiplier is a function that is really good for sports clubs. It's a feature that you can add on to your project, and it can be extremely effective for sports clubs because it allows people to fundraise on behalf of your project. So quite often sports clubs will have lots of members and probably quite competitive members, so you could potentially strike up a little bit of competition to see who can raise the most. So they might want to do a sponsor swim, or they might run a marathon. You could even potentially have different teams or squads who fancy a bit of competition to see who can raise the most towards the overall goal. So it's a great way as well of then tapping into the personal networks of those fundraisers. So you can see on here, we've got a great project that took advantage of this feature, and that was the Spencer Lacrosse Club. So they had 44 fundraisers in total, and that helped them to raise just over £22,000. Or yeah, I think in the end they got just over 22. So take a look at that feature. It works really well for sports clubs. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit more on the mechanics of the extra funding. So we've had a synopsis from Rebecca already. So the Active Together Fund is designed to support not-for-profit organisations that bring sport to the community and that they've been financially affected by the pandemic. So Sport England have released £7.5 million into this Active Together Fund. Each club can receive up to a maximum of £10,000. And the amount that you're supported with will be calculated based on a percentage of your initial target. And that will take into account your club's indices of multiple deprivation decile as well. So that means that those in a more affluent area are likely to receive around 30 or 40%, and those in more deprived areas, it might be around more towards 50%. So if we take a look at how it actually works, okay, so you're going to create your fabulous crowdfunding project, put the page together as I've mentioned, and when your page is ready, you can then apply for the extra funding through your dashboard, and this will be reviewed by Sport England, who will let you know how much they'll be supporting your project with. You then launch your campaign, and the Sport England pledge will be visible on your campaign once you reach 25%. So you can see there on the counter at the bottom there, 25%, and the number of required supporters. You'll be told how many unique supporters you need pledges from. Once you've met these two conditions, Sport England will pledge onto your campaign, bringing you closer to your target. So it'll show actually on your page. Once that's applied, you must then go on to reach your target and secure that extra funding. If you don't reach your target, then the extra funding will just simply go back to Sport England. So you can see in the table on the right-hand side there, actually, the number of required supporters that you need in addition to reaching 25% of your target. And that's relative to your initial target that you've set for your project. Okay. So let's just have a look at a selection of projects that have taken part and done this all successfully. You're all at a great advantage with sports clubs because sport really crowdfunds well. And that makes sense if you think about it. Crowdfunding is all about communities getting together and cheering for a common goal, and therefore that's what sports clubs tend to have in common as well. So they're often, sports clubs are often at the heart of a community, and by definition, you have a group of potentially competitive members who will directly benefit from the project too. So whether it is rugby, scuba diving, or speed skating, then we've seen them all crowdfund successfully, as you can see from the pictures down there. And it's always worth taking a look at our sports page online if you haven't already done so. You can see some of these past projects and get some ideas for pages and such like. Okay. So I'm going to hand back to Zoe, who's now going to introduce Sarah.
Hi, thank you, Kirsty. That was really informative. Thank you very much. And hi, Sarah. Nice to see you.
Hello. Morning, everyone. Afternoon.
So we have Sarah here from Friends of Otley Lido. You've recently crowdfunded for a whopping amount of money. So you managed to raise just over £60,000 from 876 supporters, which is absolutely massive and very impressive. So well done you.
Thank you.
So what I'll do in just a second, let me just pop a link to your project just in the, here we go, just in the chat box. So anyone can have a little look at your actual project page and your project whilst we have a chat or later on. If anyone has any questions for Sarah, please pop them into the chat box and we'll get round to those in a little bit. But we have some questions for you ourselves. So Sarah, could you tell us a little bit about your project, please?
Okay, so Friends of Otley Lido has been running for 5 years. So we are a community interest company, very, very small group. There were only 4 of us that have, we have increased our membership slightly now, but so a very small group. And we've been trying for 5 years to make a sort of really a start on rebuilding, completely rebuilding what was an open door, open air swimming pool in Otley, which closed in '96. And our sort of vision really is that we would like to rebuild a modern day Lido on the same site.
Wonderful. So why did you decide to crowdfund for that?
Well, we were impacted by COVID. We've previously taken part in local fundraising events that happen around Otley. Otley's quite a small community and it has a number of kind of traditional events, you know, a kind of Victorian Christmas market, the sort of the summer fair and all of those kind of things, which although we never raised a lot of money from them, they were quite useful in terms of keeping sort of our profile up with the local community. And it did give us, you know, some sort of relatively small streams of funding. But we'd got to the point where in order to apply for planning permission that we needed what for us was a really big chunk of money, £53,000. We'd already raised 12 in other ways, but we needed that in order to pay for the specialist reports and all the surveys that need doing. And we really felt that we had to almost go out and test the local community, because there's been a lot of goodwill over the years for the Lido, a lot of people kind of interested to know what we're doing. And we got to the point where we thought, okay, we need to test the local community's commitment, to be honest, which is why we decided to go kind of through a crowdfunding style. And in terms of why we actually chose Crowdfunder, we felt that sort of represented what we were trying to do, because it was very much about a whole community approach. And also, I suppose the other things that attracted us to using that sort of specific platform was the potential access to additional funding from Sports England, but also there seemed to be, and indeed there was, a lot of support available to help. So those were the things that attracted us specifically to that.
That's lovely, thank you. What did you find was most difficult about crowdfunding?
I think one of the things that's difficult is about having an idea of how much time it's going to take, and almost like getting your ducks lined up in the right way to start with. So we spent what felt to be a really, really long time writing the crowdfunding page. And in hindsight, it was time well spent, even though at that stage we were really keen to actually get on with it. But we invested a lot of time in the page because we knew it was really significant what we were trying to do. Our local community, we knew there'd be some people who didn't really care what we wrote on the page. They would have given us some money anyhow, but there were other people who would really want to know what they were getting for the money. And so having enough time to do everything you need to do before you actually launch is really important, and to not underestimate how long that takes. The actual page and writing it, as you said earlier, it's easy to do, but it does take quite a long time. And I think the other thing is that we wanted to try and cater for everybody. We wanted to cater for those people who were able and wanted to donate £10, but we also wanted to try and attract some kind of bigger funders who could potentially donate, maybe a couple of £1,000, because we knew that without some of those bigger sort of donations, realistically we weren't going to get to 53,000. So trying to write something that applies to everybody. I think the other thing that's difficult is just keeping up with it. Once it launches, I very naively thought I would just sit back and watch the money roll in. Oh, how wrong was I? So coordinating everything, coordinating the social media, kind of, you know, sort of that whole idea about identifying who your crowd are, who is it you're appealing to, how are you going to let them know what you're doing, so how are you going to kind of warm them up, but not only warming them up, how are you going to keep them engaged through the process. And it is a fine line on social media about, you know, informing people what you're doing, but also not kind of oversaturating those kind of local community groups and things, because we didn't want people to kind of get fed up with us and think, oh, they're still there every day, you know, wanting more and more money. So I think, you know, we had to think really hard about how do we keep people engaged. How can we kind of give them different types of information, which isn't always about the message, please, we need a pledge from you. It's about giving them something else as well. So time, I think, is the biggest challenge.
Really brilliant advice. You touched on some really key points there, actually. I think many people will say that having a team of people to support you whilst crowdfunding is really important. And that's what's brilliant about sports clubs, is you generally do have members that you can delegate to. And like you said, kind of keeping the story fresh, keeping the narrative fresh and changing. Make sure you've got a really good plan of promotion going forward throughout your campaign, so it's not just the same repetitive message. I think is really important. So that's great advice. Thank you. What did you find worked the best?
Well, I think the whole Crowdfunder platform is easy to use. So once you got going with it, that was helpful. Because I think, you know, none of us, I mean, there is only 4 of us in our group, and we don't have an existing sports club to pull on, because we aren't a club yet. We are 4 people who are trying to kind of restore a Lido to develop a club. So the fact that it was easy to use really helped. I think the other thing that I learned very quickly on was actually make use of the support that is available. So not you know, the little videos are really great. We read through all of the documents, which are really nicely laid out and helpful, take you through the different stages. But I realised early on, actually get to know somebody in Crowdfunder. They are there at the end of the phone to talk things through. And for me, that made a huge difference, to be able to just check in with people. And also, I think by building a bit of relationship with a couple of people in Crowdfunder, it meant that I felt we got really honest feedback about what we were doing early on. And through some of that feedback, we changed what we were doing, which made a massive difference to the outcome.
That's lovely. Thank you. For all of those that are just starting up with your crowdfunding journey, we will put a link to the Learn platform, which I think is what Sarah was referring to, with all the kind of the hints on how to do it. So you can work your way through that as well. You had an enormous amount of support from your community, Sarah. 876 supporters is phenomenal. How did you manage to raise so much awareness for your project locally?
Well, we did all sorts of things, to be honest. I think obviously social media is really important. So that, but we also recognise that not everybody uses social media. There's it's quite, in some respects, quite a traditional community in Otley. It's quite a mixed community. You know, we have a lot of older people who have very fond memories of going to the Lido, and we wanted to try and not exclude people who perhaps, you know, weren't on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all of those things. So we actually did a leaflet drop prior to starting, which we were lucky enough that we had that funded by a local business, because that was, we were sort of in that position about, do we spend essentially around £800, including the delivery, from our fairly limited funds to do that. But we got that sponsored in the end, so that was brilliant. So having the leaflet, I think having kind of regular social media things. We had a couple of events as well down at the Lido site where we, you know, we were there as a physical presence, handing out leaflets, talking to people. Obviously, you're only capturing a relatively small number of people in those instances. But I think, again, because of COVID, you know, we hadn't been able to do all of the things we normally do. So we just had to try and just get out there and remind people of who we are and what we're doing and why. So having banners up in local supermarkets, we had 2 banners which we moved around various sites through the crowdfunding campaign, which we did for 6 weeks. We asked people to, if you spotted the banner somewhere new, the first person to get in with a photo got a little prize, all of those sort of just little things to try and engage the community, really.
Wonderful. What about your rewards? Because you've got a brilliant selection of rewards on your page. How did you go about sourcing those?
Well, I would say that this was really fantastic advice we got early on about rewards, because when we wrote our page initially, to be honest, we'd had a look at what other Lidos did and also what we'd done for a very small crowdfunding campaign a couple of years ago where we raised a couple of £1,000, and initially we had all these kind of bundles of kind of Lido merchandise, and then we were sort of advised very early on that idea about you've got to sort of appeal to people who are out, people who don't want to swim, people who aren't really that interested in the Lido, but people who would like to kind of have a bargain. And so we'd launched before we did all this. So what I would say is get your business rewards lined up before you actually launch, because essentially I spent 6 weeks going around town, talking to people, asking them, if they could make a kind of offer something, usually something like a reward, that we could put up on the site. And I think what we tried to do was we tried to make it as easy as possible for the businesses, to make the processes easy, but we also wanted the process to be sort of a bit professional as well. So what we would do is, so if a shop or wherever had agreed to offer something, I would then email that back to them so they got that information, about sort of how the rewards would be collected as well by people. Because we didn't sort of want businesses to kind of offer something but then not feel that they were getting anything. And then obviously we advertised their business. We did individual posts across our website, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter for every single reward that we had up. And I think I've just had a quick count up before I came. We had 56 business rewards that ranged from things from like £9, a sort of a discount off the barbers, up to £500 off a holiday cottage in Filey, and everything you could possibly imagine in between. So it's about sort of, even if a reward or an offer of reward seems a bit like, oh, I'm not really sure why people would be interested in that. It's about working with that business to think, because they're coming to you and offering it because they want to do something. So there's a bit about trying to sort of be really creative about how you can make things work. So we had a pest control company who were really wanting to help, and we did actually sell those in the end. We had another building company offer us a big bundle of rock wool. It's not the most obvious thing, but somebody ended up getting a real bargain. And then all of those more obvious things, the vouchers from the cafes, the different things like that. So yeah, we made the process easy for the business, try and give them something back, which for me was the advertising of their business through the process, but also a thank you email which explained about the process as well, so they've got something.
A real collaboration between you.
It was a collaboration. It's hard work, and I got to the point where if I was walking out in Otley, I'm quite sure people were just dodging me, thinking, oh, there she is again, she's after something.
We're getting close to the half an hour mark, but we've got a few more questions, and then we'll head over to the Q&A and try and get as many of those done as well. Just very quickly, Sarah, other than the financial benefits, did crowdfunding bring any other benefits to the group, to the campaign? Yeah, definitely. So it brought us together as a team, definitely. We've been kind of battling away for quite a while as a very small group, and it's really brought us closer, and we're now quite sort of slick in our operation. It brought 4 new people to join our committee, which is fantastic. And whilst it was a really difficult time to integrate new people when we were literally running at full speed, those people have kind of patiently waited, and we're now starting to bring them in on meetings, which is fantastic. It also increased our profile locally. So we've had a lot of businesses offering to come in and do sort of consultation with us, some offering pro bono support. So it's kind of, people now see it as something that's actually viable. And I think
it's not just us that are believing that ultimately we may have a fantastic open air swimming pool in Otley. I think other people believe it as well. So increased profile and more real interest.
Great news. And just finally, if you could firstly let us know if you would crowdfund again, and also what advice you'd give to other people who are looking to crowdfund.
I would definitely do it again, without a doubt. I think there's something quite kind of simple and kind of honest about the whole premise, because people can see what they're getting right from the start. My advice would be listen to the advice, engage with the staff at Crowdfunder because they're brilliant, and give yourself plenty of time, both prior to actually launching, and try and think things through before you launch. And then once you have launched, don't be surprised as to how much time it actually takes, particularly if you're regularly adding rewards and wanting to get those out on social media. And I think the bit about making the rewards as easy as possible for the businesses, so you're taking the burden of the work off them, really.
Thank you very much. I think you would have inspired a lot of people to start their crowdfunding journey, and yours has been so successful. So well done. Well, let's welcome back Rebecca and Kirsty. See if we've got some questions for you guys. I think Kirsty's been monitoring the chat box whilst we've been talking, so I'll let you lead.
Brilliant, no problem at all. So one for yourself, Rebecca, from Gareth. So hi, may I ask if the Places Spaces Fund is only available to clubs in the West Midlands? He's in Leicester. Somebody else also asked, sorry, later on you can combine the answer, when will it roll out nationally?
Yeah, so to begin with, it will be open to clubs specifically in the West Midlands region, so in that kind of combined authority. We're looking to then roll it out spring of kind of next year nationally. But also just don't forget, obviously, the Active Together Fund is open this entire time, which is quite broad in terms of what you can apply for as well. So if you're concerned where you'll fit, or kind of what match funding suits you best, just drop us an email and we can definitely get in touch with you.
Okay. Guy has also asked, we have already had 10,000 from the Return to Play Fund. Can we apply again via this crowdfunding process to secure funds for facilities?
Yeah, you can certainly, we encourage clubs to come back in. As kind of Sarah suggested, we'd like to think clubs would want to happily crowdfund again, or kind of have the kind of confidence to then do a second campaign. It'll have to be for something slightly, you can't come kind of back in for the exact same project ultimately. Fair enough, if it's helped you, if the initial campaigns helped you move a project on down the line, that's great. It'll just have to be a slightly kind of different, or kind of you're fundraising for something slightly different for your club. It can't be the exact replica as the campaign before, but we do certainly encourage campaigns to come back in again if they need to.
Now, one from Gareth. So as well as the club he's involved with, which is a non-profit community, he's also exploring the possibility of becoming a mental fitness coach as a private business, and looking to gain qualifications. Would there be any funding available for such a venture with Crowdfunder and Sport England?
Yeah, so
yeah.
Oh, no, you go first if you want.
I was going to say, do you want to answer on the Sport England front, and then I can maybe pick up on the...
Yeah, so for on our funds, you wouldn't be eligible under kind of a sole trader, or for your campaigns benefiting the sole use of yourself. If it's as part of like a wider campaign for your sports or community organisation, we'd potentially be able to consider that. But this fund in particular, or both of these funds in particular, is about community activation, not kind of the sole fundraising for a sole trader or a sole individual, if that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so from a crowdfunder perspective, although you potentially wouldn't have any extra funding available to you, depending on where in the country you are, but we do have, you can use our platform very well and very easily for startup funds. So as a private business, we do have a lot of businesses raising funds for exactly that, startup funds. And if that's going towards paying your qualifications, then that's the story that you tell to your crowd. So there's no reason why you couldn't actually crowdfund. You're just not actually eligible for the Sport England side of things. Question from Julia to Sarah. Now it just says how much time, Sarah. I don't know what that's in relation to, because it's obviously come in during your chat.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of it depends how much you've got done first. The thing that was the most time consuming for us after we launched was then starting to get all the business rewards. And, you know, so some days I felt at times as though I was almost working full time on it. And then having to kind of coordinate the social media as well. But had we done some of that beforehand, it obviously would have taken less time as the campaign was running.
Brilliant. And then following from that, Louise has asked, what's the cost of the project, your project, and will crowdfunding be able to build a Lido?
Well, part of the reason we need to get through this stage in terms of the sort of, you know, the feasibility study and everything that involves is that until we've actually got planning permission, and part of that process is going to be about a detailed business plan. So we're really taking it a step at a time. We don't actually know what the final cost would be. I don't see that we will be able to go back out to the local communities to expect them. I'm assuming it's going to be several millions to build a Lido. You know, that's another stage for us. We're not quite there yet, but it's going to be a lot of money.
Nick has asked, does Crowdfunder have a suggestion as to how long a fundraising campaign should be? We normally recommend between 4 to 6 weeks. It needs to have a sense of urgency, so people know what you're aiming for, and they need to get their pledge in. And it doesn't always equate that the longer you run it, the more you'll raise, because people can become a bit fatigued with your promotion, etc. So yeah, get that urgency about it. About 4 to 6 weeks, we would say, is the ultimate time. And Brian's asked, are there problems that come with crowdfunding a project? That's a very open question. Were there any specific problems that crowdfunding raised in your project, Sarah?
No, I mean, I think the only thing is your page needs to be really clear about what you're raising it for. And I think you've got to make it really easy for people to understand. So I had some concerns that there would be sort of quite a lot of people in Otley who thought when it finished that we were going to get the spades out and actually start digging the site. Clearly, we are an awful long way off that. So trying to make it really clear what that specific money that you're raising at that specific time is going to be used for. It hasn't been a problem, but I can sort of see if a page isn't really clear as to what it's for, people might think they're giving for something else.
Yeah, I would totally back that up. We've just got 2 more questions I'm going to answer because we're quite over the half hour now, so we'll cover these off and then we'll say bye-bye. But so Jessica's asked, do we have examples of non-sport organisations that have used our platform? She supports a range of charities and groups who are new to the PA and sport world, so less club-based examples would be great. Jessica, if you sign up for our Live and Learn webinar, which is at the beginning of December, it'll get it on Eventbrite at the moment. Live and Learn is our generic crowdfunder webinar, and you might get some more information out of that. And other than that, just go on to the Explore function on our website and you can see loads of projects on there, non-sport ones.
Yeah, I'd just like to add on as well. We have supported quite a lot of kind of specifically community-based campaigns and charities, so it doesn't have to be sport per se. And we also encourage clubs like that one you refer to that are kind of new to the world of physical activity and sport. Our kind of contacts locally can certainly help you kind of encourage those local links with sports groups, physical activity groups as well.
Great, okay. Thank you. And finally from Louise, does the match fund have to be raised by crowdfunding as we are looking to a capital campaign? Rebecca, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm not so in terms of for the Places and Spaces Fund, it's for kind of capital projects. So in that sense, our match funding will be going towards that as well. I'm not entirely sure what you might need to elaborate a bit on that one, Louise. Yeah. That's helpful. But yes, we are supporting kind of capital projects in match funding.
Yeah. Julia, just very quickly, Julia, you're asking, is the money transferred immediately into an account that you set up, or is there a lag period? And how long does the match or extra funding take to clear? Generally, from the crowdfunding, from what you've raised from the crowd, it takes up to 7 working days after your closing date on your project to pay out to the Sport England Fund. It should be around the same. It shouldn't take, I think that could potentially take up to 10 days. But it's all about getting the verification set up correctly ahead of time, and then there shouldn't be any delays, so the money just gets paid out directly. There's no lag for it to clear. Okay. Shall we close it off there? I think we're...
So just a big thank you to all of our panel who joined us today. So thank you, Rebecca, Kirsty, Sarah, and to all of you for attending. I'm just about to share a link into the chat box, and that is for our Learn platform. So I highly advise everyone goes and looks at that Learn platform. It will talk you through how to set up your crowdfunder, and good luck with your crowdfunding journey. Thank you for joining us, guys.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.